and welcome back to part 2 of this little Christmas notes project. So, quick recap. We did the, excuse me, we decorated the cover, or I decorated my cover, front and back. So we've already been through that. And this one was my prototype, and these are the bits and pieces that are left over from the pack that I made up. And then we've got these pieces of card left over from making the cover. Now this long one I need to keep because I want to use that as the closure, so I'm going to put that to one side, and these two can be used for other things which I'll show you in a little while. Now then, when it comes to the signature, what I did in my prototype was I just did 5 pages. So 1, 2, 3 and 4 and 5. Okay, so I just used 5 pieces of paper. Now, as I said in the first video, I used the patterned paper and I put 2 of them in each signature. So because I have used the papers to decorate the cover, that means that I'm left with just 2 pieces. So I'm going to put these 2 in the middle of a signature, 1 signature, 2 signature, so it just means that the third one won't have one of these, it'll have something else instead. And what I'm thinking of for the third signature is a paper bag. So there were 2 paper bags in the pack, and I'm going to just use one of them because it's a little bit smaller than the actual paper, but then I'll be able to use those as pockets and they'll be in the middle of the third signature. So there's one of each of my pages sorted out, and then obviously there's the lined paper. So I've got 3 pieces here, although there is more in the kit. So in fact, I'll tell you what, let's get ourselves sorted. Put that cover to one side for now. So that's 1 signature, 2 signatures, 3 signatures. Okay, and then we're going to have 1 of each of those in there as well. Now I've also got some vellum. I might save that and make an envelope. I could include some of the music paper. So they're quite, they were quite big sheets. But again, if I cut that in half, I'm only going to end up with 2. So look. So then I'd have to think of something for the third one. So I might have a little rethink on that. I've got the doilies that I can add as little decorative pieces. So what I might do is for the other 3 pages, I might just use some of my coffee dyed papers. So I'm going to cut everything up to size. Now I know that this piece here is the right size for the cover. But just get my ruler and I'll tell you the size. So this piece measures roughly 7 3/4 inches, just a little less, by just over 5.5 inches. So I'm going to cut all my pieces to round about that size. And in fact, if I just check with that lined paper is the right height. So I could actually leave that as it is, because it, you know, it'd be boring if they were all the same size. Yeah, so that's what I'm going to do. I'm just going to go off and go and cut some of my coffee dyed papers, and then I'm going to arrange my papers in the order that I want, and then I'll come back and show you what I've done. I've sorted the papers out for my signatures. So I've got a coffee dyed piece in this one. This one was red bush tea, so it kind of gives this lovely goldeny colour. I've got my lined paper, I've got the paper bag, and then another piece of red bush, and then I cut down the 12 Days of Christmas paper. Now the numbers don't go in order, but it doesn't matter because I can always add those other pieces in as decorative little elements anyway. But as you can see, look, this lined paper sticks beyond the actual edge. So what I could do with that is I could just fold it over, little bend, come on, very nicely. Just fold it over, and then I can either glue that down to make it into a little tuck spot, or I can have it as a little flip out piece. Okay, so that reduces that, and I'm just going to clip those together. Just make sure everything's where I want it to be, height wise. Now I'm going to use these lovely Glitzy Glam clips. Now I know that in one of the videos a lady did ask me whether I'd done these myself, and I hadn't. I was actually gifted them by one of my lovely friends, lovely Maggie, when we went to Spain. I was teaching in Spain. She gifted them to me. So no, I didn't do the glitzy clips myself. Right, so that one's clipped in place. Second one, I've used one of the papers. I've used one of the pieces of card. Use the line paper again. It's sticking out, so I'm going to fold that bit over. A little bit of red bush tea. Paper bag, which I've cut open at the other end. So I've got a double-ended pocket, and again some more of the 12 Days of Christmas paper. So that'll be a second signature. And then the third one, I've got a coffee dyed paper, red bush paper, another red bush paper, the lined paper, again need to fold that one in. And then I've got some of the paper doily here. Now what I did with the paper doily was, it was a square one, and so I cut it in half and then folded it in half, and then there's this lovely solid white line here, so I used that as my guide to cut around so that it gave me this piece like this. Now I'm going to attach it at the bottom so that it forms a pocket. But one of the problems that I've got is because it's a paper doily and it's so open cut, it means that any time I enter anything into the pocket, it's going to catch on the back of those pieces. And so I'm going to cut a piece of vellum to the same size, but you could use tracing paper. And I'm first going to stick this. Let's do it now whilst we're talking about it. And I'm going to use my glue stick. So I want my mat. Where's my mat? Let's use that. I'm going to use my glue stick. Where's that? That there. I'm going to very carefully apply the glue stick to the back of the paper doily, making sure that I don't rip the doily because they are fairly delicate papers. Oops, bent over, don't do that. And I'm going to try and get as much as I can. On there. Okay, I think I've got most of that covered. If I carefully peel that off, because there will be glue seepage on the other side. And then we'll place that on top of the vellum in that bottom right hand corner. In fact, I've got ink from off my mat, so I would need to ink up the rest of this piece now as well. And I'm going to have to wait for that glue to dry because it's quite sticky. And this just means now that I don't lose the pattern of the paper doily because of the vellum or tracing paper being so see-through. But it does mean that when I put something inside of the pocket, it's not going to get caught up on the pattern. So I would wrap that around there and glue that down. So I need to wait for this glue to dry, ink up all those edges, and then I'll be able to put that one in place as well. So we'll put that off to the side for that to dry. And we'll put one of these signatures in place. I've got a linen thread that's waxed up, and I'm just going to slot this first signature here on this valley fold there. I'm just going to hold it in place, and I'm going to use my pokey tool and I've got a foam mat here so that I don't poke my fingers. And I'm going to do 3 holes, one in the middle, one at the bottom, so about 3/4 of an inch to 1 inch away from the bottom edge, and the same again. And the same again at the top, about 3/4 of an inch to 1 inch from the top. Go down through the centre hole and leave a tail. Come back up through that top hole. Go right the way down to the bottom hole. And come back up through the middle hole on the outside. And then this long thread here that we've done from the top down to the bottom, we want one of these loose ends on the one side of it, and then we want this one that we're pulling through on the other side of it. So then we can form a loop with those 2 threads and put the needle and thread through that loop twice and pull it in nice and firm, and then trim off those excess. And that will be one of my signatures now in place in my book. Now, as you can see this thread here on the outside. What you can do is you can get your blending tool and you can ink over the top. So you're inking the card, but you're also inking up the thread as well, so it kind of starts to blend it together so that it's not so visible. So I'm going to go off and go and attach my other 2 signatures. So one will be attached here and one will be attached here. So I'll go off and do those and then I'll be back. Alright, that's one signature in place at the front, and then flip that middle bit over, and that's my second signature in place, and I need to put this third one in, which will go on the back side. Now the best way to do it is to pull the signatures that you've already put in situ to the outer edge and then open it up. So the signatures are now sat under the covers there, and then that one will sit in there, and it's now much easier to deal with rather than having all these flippy flappy bits of paper all over the spot, getting in your way with lots of cussing, swearing like a trooper. So one in the middle, one at the bottom, that was nearly my finger, only very nearly though, and one at the top. And then I'm going to go off and go and sew this one in place. See you in a sec. That's all 3 signatures now in place. So if I open it up like that, you should be able to see all the signatures in place. Next thing that I want to do is I want to make the closure, and that's where this long piece comes into play. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to place it behind and centralise it. And I can only do this bit once I've finished putting the signatures in. Now obviously the more you add to it, the thicker it's going to get. But as you can see, it's already quite thick. So it really is only for journaling in, for writing in, more than it is for being a decorative kind of journal that's, you know, got loads of embellishments in. And then I'm going to lift that card up and just push it to bend it a little, and then over the top. And I can leave this fairly loose so that it will allow for a little bit of growth, but not a lot of growth. So this fold here isn't right up against the edge of the book. Okay, and then do the same on this side, fold it up and then bend it round. Now at the moment these 2 pieces of card overlap, and we don't want it to do that. So where's my scissors? There. I'm going to chop through both pieces at the same time up the middle. Okay, ooh, line them up and then just chop through the middle. So that's the excess piece off one side and that's the excess piece off another. Right, now at the moment they still kind of overlap a little bit, but what we would then do is we need around about sort of an inch gap. All right, the reason why I've just cut it up the middle for now is because I want to talk to you about a couple of options. I'm going to use one of my Stampin' Up tag punches, which will take off some of this excess anyway on both ends. Or you could just cut it like a normal tag, you know, where you just cut off the angles. But that would mean then that I'd need to cut them slightly shorter again to create that gap between the two. But the punch takes off some of this card at the top here as well, so it will end up leaving that little bit of a gap. The other thing was in the kit there was a tag in there, so you could actually draw around that shape there, that top part of that tag, and cut around that, so then it matches up with the tag that's actually inside the booklet. Now I'm just going to take a fraction more off each of these ends. Oh, and you know when I said earlier, oh, nearly stabbed my finger. Yeah, well, I did. Look, I've had to put some micropore on. Daft moo that I is. So we'll take a little off that and a little off that. And then I'm going to use the tab punch. Now this is wider than what's supposed to be allowed in there, but if I tilt it and push it in, she says, it'll just go in. Then if I turn it round, I can kind of centralise it and punch. So can you see here I've now got these 2 little tab bits. That's fine because I can just whip those off with my scissors and you'd be none the wiser. And then do the same at the other end. So we'll slip that in there, turn it over, just centralise that card, punch, and again just trim off those little excess pieces. Now as you can see, I've not really made any definite crease marks on here for the time being because I don't know what else I'm going to add to it, and I want to allow it some expansion to grow. So you can see now, look, that we've got that kind of spacing between the two pieces. All right, so that's about sort of 1/2 inch-ish. Then I've got 1 metre of seam binding. I'm going to cut it in half and take one piece, fold it in half again, and put that loop through that hole that the tag punch has made. Now obviously if you've drawn around that other tag, or you've just cut the angles off the corners to make a tag shape, you will need to punch a hole, and you will probably really need some reinforcer holes on there. So I'll probably come back and do that a bit later on, because any kind of pressure as you're doing up these ribbons will just end up ripping this card. Okay, I don't want to pull that too tight because I haven't got the whole reinforcers on, so we'll leave that for now, because it'd be just my luck, I pull on it and it goes, breaks the hole. Okay, but that will then tie up around there, and the nice thing is that once it's tied up, all I've then got to do is just slide that off. I haven't got to undo the bow every time I want to be able to get into the journal. Obviously then I would ink it all up. You could even emboss it, you know, do pretty stuff, stamping on it as well, add extra paper on it. Just a couple of other things I wanted to talk to you about. So these were the other 2 pieces of card that we'd got left over. This piece here, I could actually draw around that tag shape there, and then I've got myself another tag. I've got this red card in here, I could draw around that and I could get another tag out of there. So then I've got matching tags. This I could make into a little mini booklet that I could slip underneath the cover to actually act as another little booklet if I wanted to make note maybe of the expenses of stuff. So if we imagine this around here, I could make a little mini booklet to just slip underneath this part of the piece that's holding the journal together. And the other thing that I thought of was this gold card. You know how I said about these were, maybe that's not a good example, let's do this one. These were maybe slightly shorter at the bottom. I did think about getting one of my border punches and just punching along one edge, cutting it off as a strip and adding it as a tiny little pocket on the bottom there to just cover over that little piece, but it also gives me then a little tuck spot to put maybe receipts and things in. The other thing that I thought of was this page that was in the pack. I could cut those out as either a single strip of blocks or a double strip of blocks, and then I could add those to the pages as a belly band. I could even do it sort of that way, so then you've got a horizontal belly band. Yeah, all sorts of different ideas really. So that's the basics of making the journal and the closure for it. Really now it's up to you to go off and go and play with the rest of the materials that were in the pack, or if you're using your own products, you know, from your own stash, then you could go off and go and utilise those. I thought about cutting the Santa Claus out and putting him on the front, but doing a much better job of it than I did here, because as I say, this was just the prototype. So yeah, I'm thinking of cutting him out and putting him on there. Anyway, that's the little Christmas notebook. I hope that you've enjoyed the video, and that it's given you some kind of ideas and a bit of inspiration as to what you could do for your excuse me, for your own project. And I'll see you again really soon. Thank you for joining me, and there's the next project coming up very soon as well. So I'll see you again ASAP. See you soon. Take care, everyone. Bye for now.